Hi, welcome to our webinar tonight, Solving Transportation Problems to Improve Communities' Lives, to improve people's lives, excuse me. What we're looking forward to sharing a little bit more about careers in transportation, and appreciate you taking time to learn more about that as you're starting your career. One of the things that I'd like to first do is introduce ourselves. My name is Brian Ray. I've been with Kittelson for about 23 years. I've worked in the profession 10 years prior, so that means I'm a little bit senior. I found transportation to be really exciting, and it's evolved over the years. And one of the things that makes me most interested in this is the way things are changing and how we can build on the experiences from the past, but always be looking for addressing the new challenges of the future. I want to go ahead and have Kylie and Jennifer introduce themselves.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, my name is Kylie Cavanis, and I work in the Reston, Virginia office. I started at Kittelson in August 2016 after graduating with a bachelor's degree in engineering from James Madison University. It was there that I became interested in transportation engineering and planning through a few classes and a professor of mine. A lot of the work that I do now is a variety of both engineering and planning projects, including operations and alternatives analysis, corridor improvement studies, and transportation safety improvements.
And hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Musselman. I work in the Tampa office. I've been with Kittelson for a little over 3 years now. I went to the University of Virginia where I got my undergraduate degree in civil engineering. During that time, I interned with Kittelson in the Reston office where Kylie is now, and then joined at full-time after graduating in 2014. Like Kylie, I quickly found that I had a passion for both the engineering and the planning aspects of transportation. And I've been spending most of my time recently looking at multimodal corridor studies and planning and how to integrate different users on different roadways in different contexts. I also help with the internship program. I help coordinate this webinar with Kylie and help with the intern hiring and recruiting, and then help facilitate the internship program throughout the summer. So it's something that's really near and dear to my heart. Before we get started with the presentation, I want to go over just a couple of ground rules for the webinar. We're going to have the presentation first, and then at the end we'll have plenty of time for question and answers. So feel free to post your questions in the console, the GoToWebinar console, throughout the presentation as they come up, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And then throughout the presentation, we'll have a few poll questions just to keep you all engaged throughout. So we'll start with a couple right now so you get the hang of it and we can find out a little bit more about who all is listening tonight. So the first one, just a simple one, what is your grade level? And I'll give everyone a few seconds to answer. Last chance. And I'll go ahead and close this out and share the results. So a few freshmen and sophomores, quite a few juniors, some seniors, plenty of graduate students out there, a few PhDs. So then we'll do one more poll question right off the bat here to get a better sense of what you all are studying. I'll give you just a couple more seconds to get your answers in. I'm going to go ahead and close this. So overwhelmingly engineering and computer science students, several planning students, a few on the business and policy side, and then a few in that other category that we weren't quite able to capture in our answers. So with that, I will turn it back over to Brian to start the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, one of the things that we like to do this evening is walk you through a little bit about transportation connections. It sounds like some of you are perhaps at the more senior level in your educational path, so you probably have some ideas, and some of this won't come as a surprise to you. Others, what it might do is it may help connect for you where and how you might take your current studies and how those might connect you to transportation. One of the things we'll also cover then is just chat a little bit about career opportunities. We'll cover that in a broad sense. Our interest is to provide you with objective information related to the transportation profession. In some areas, we'll talk a little bit about our firm, but that's really meant to give you a contrast or an example of where and how you might fit. Regardless of what you'd like to do in transportation, it's a fantastic career, and we'd like to at least help share with you a little bit more about what some of the broad range there is. We'll then move over and share a bit more about our internship program specifically. We're very proud of the program. We think it creates lots of opportunities. And one of the things that makes us a little bit unique is, for us, a successful internship can be somebody finding their way to, not in transportation. They may be deciding they want to be in transportation, or might they want to be instructors. They may choose to go instructors, and that's great. We want people to help find their way. We'd like to show you some project examples. That's the best way to see, and these will be some real examples from Kylie about her real-life experiences. And of course, most importantly, we want to make sure there's plenty of time for open discussion, and then anything goes in terms of the questions. We're really glad to have this forum, and we think it's terrific to be able to learn what your needs are. So I think, first and foremost, transportation is really broad. I know that when I was in school long ago, I hadn't really thought so much about the breadth of transportation. I was thinking along the lines more of engineering. I was thinking along the lines more of the technical piece. And it really wasn't until much later, as I started getting involved in the practice, that I realized the breadth of experiences, the type of exposure, and the impact that transportation can have, in particular with land use, with communities, with culture. And I think that's probably one of the things I realized I was probably the most naive about, is the broad range and effects of transportation. That's something that I really enjoy now, and I've learned. I think first and foremost, transportation is about people. Whether we want to think about which was first, the land use component, and then was transportation there to support it, or did we have transportation that then led us to the land use itself, it really is connecting people. And it's like at the personal level, that's the experiences that you and your family and your friends might have. It's what happens with you within your community, how you connect locally around whatever that community might be. But even beyond that, we're really connected in a true global economy, and transportation is that arm that pulls all of those pieces together. Over time, one of the things I've learned about is really the great value that comes from the diverse connections, international experiences, international points of view, and mixing of that really helps strengthen our profession. We all learn from each other, and I think it makes us, allows us to do a better job. Transportation really connects all modes. I think there's a common aspect, particularly with engineers, is to think often about autos and moving motorized traffic. And there's no doubt that that's a big part of what we do or what's around us. But it truly, transportation, if we talk about transportation as a system, it's really connecting all types of modes. And so that goes from, if we think about the aspect of business, but education, but it's freight, it's mobility, it's commerce, it's culture. And whether we're involved with any aspect about this, the transportation profession offers you a chance to be engaged in any array of topical areas. And I think that's something I would want you to be able to realize, that what you can do as an engineer, as a planner, as a scientist, and other areas, the application of this can be really broad in terms of the topical areas of the transportation type, but it can also be where or how you want to invest that in your community or within your career. And as I was really indicating, it's not just about cars. And one of the things that to me is really fun to see in our profession is, as we're really truly moving away from measuring autos and motor vehicle traffic as a measure of success for performance, and really understanding that moving people and things, that freight and people are as critical. And it means that it's a stronger connection between moving people, connecting to the land use, reflecting that how we serve the individuals has a great impact on how our communities, how vibrant our communities are, that we want to be more sensitive about our environment, that we want to think about sustainability, and increasingly the interest in public health and the benefits of active transportation in terms of societal costs and health is terrific. It's created some interesting and fun challenges in the engineering profession too, as many times we're really looking for new ways to allocate that space that's out there in the roadway network. How do we allocate that space and provide more opportunities for transit, for peds and bicycles? And so I think these are some of the evolutions that are occurring in the profession that make it that much more exciting. And what we're really seeing is many of our young professionals have a great passion for transportation planning, land use, livability, community, and peds and bikes are such a critical part of that. Transportation really is a key element. It's the hub of the industry, and so whether that's from the air side, whether it's the automobile or it's freight, there's so much engaged between what we do and how we do it that it's a critical component from a personal level of us being able to get to our jobs, be able to get to our employers, but it really is a key part of our communities of holding us together. And of course, with our global economy and our global connections, the transportation elements are even broader, and those needs are even more critical as we think about it. So it's beyond just what we see around us, it's beyond what we see in our communities. It's really thinking and making sure that all of the economy is connected through the various nodes. Equity is a big part of our industry now, and a number of communities are looking at performance metrics for projects or funding, and the equity component is becoming an increasing performance metric, again, moving away from how many automobiles did we move. But transportation is still a very, very significant impact on family spending. If we think about housing as a major cost, transportation is really up there. And if we think about, again, land use and transportation, some of the equity, that aspect of having a car, having the ability to get around is so critical for maintaining a family. So how we move around is critical. How efficient that can be is important to our quality of life. There's some really great challenges and opportunities before us. And what we'll talk about here a little bit is just the concepts of complete streets, connected and automated vehicles. Everybody gets excited about that. And really the topic of smart cities. But what I've seen in my career path is that these topical areas are really pushing the bounds of what has been going on historically. They're helping drive many of the policies that we're looking to. And they're really, solving these challenges are a big part of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. If we talk about complete streets, the idea of complete streets is that they are more than just a street for cars. A number of years ago, there was a movement called Thinking Beyond the Pavement, and what it really reflected is that our roadways themselves had to be thought of as more than just the pavement itself. It was that whole interface of the roadway network, where and how it served a variety of users. When we talk about complete streets, many times what we see, there's opportunities for extensive planning and design, integration with land use, integration with community values, heritage. And what we really are seeing is that it's an overall intent or mission to enhance places and the quality of life that people have. And what we're really seeing, though, is beyond complete streets. What I'd like to say is that really that we're talking much more about complete networks. We're reflecting that we can't put necessarily all users on all facilities. So by thinking about the network, how those pieces come together, we're able to start looking at building communities, supporting communities in new and exciting ways. And if we want to think again about the active transportation and new and emerging areas in terms of, say, protected bike lanes, transit, what we're really seeing is some great ways to support those complete streets principles. I can't think of anything that's more exciting or shiny right now than connected and automated vehicles. It's just something that appeals to so many people. There's quite a bit of mystique about it. And I think ultimately it's fun to think about where we might be years and years from now when we have fully autonomous vehicles and those fully autonomous vehicles will do all of the work for us. But in reality, there's going to be some really great opportunities and challenges as we simply start moving from connected vehicles. Those are vehicles that are talking to other vehicles itself. Ultimately, we're going to start looking at smart roadways, where the vehicles and the roadways are essentially talking to each other. We might think about some of those applications even today with ITS, where it's weather and a cold road indicating back to the driver of the cars about freezing condition. We'll be seeing anti-collision sensors at intersections. But we're going to see a transition from these connected vehicles to automated vehicles to those autonomous vehicles. There's many technical challenges, lots of opportunities to figure out where and how they come together. But this is really an emerging area, great amount of study, has huge impacts on our land use, our rural locations. And while this graphic that we're showing here is one that I often see, it's sort of a highway and mobility focus, really what we're going to see is connected and automated vehicles and smart roadways and infrastructure in urban environments is going to be that much more critical too. How do we look for it and look at vehicle to other user types, parking, other types of integration, speed management, parking management, connected automated vehicles are clearly an emerging area that's going to be a focus for many, many years. The smart cities concept is really neat. I think it's an expansion of the idea of complete streets, where it's really moving away from just the particular element of the infrastructure, but really thinking about a whole community, thinking about where and how all of the pieces come together. And that's really, to me, what's exciting about the network component, the multimodal component, the technological component. And if we start thinking about how and where we can allow people to move around fluidly within the community, we can really start creating that vibrant community, that vibrant location. We can have that economy that we would like to have. We can have that community and the culture that we'd like to see. It also, though, creates lots of technical interest areas, and that can include everything from the evolution of anything as simple as parking and parking management to thinking about the planning components, the policy needs that we're thinking about for funding and pulling these areas together. So I'm going to turn it over back to Jennifer to do a little poll here about the field of transportation.
Yeah, so we are wondering what you find most exciting about the field of transportation. And while you all are thinking of your answers, I'll ask Kylie to share some of her thoughts on this question.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say that there are so many things that are exciting about transportation. I think the piece that sticks with me the most and I have the most heart for is shaping communities. I think transportation, like Brian says, is an area that everyone deals with in their day-to-day, and you're positively or negatively impacted by it. And just being able to work in a field where what I do has a direct impact on communities in hopes of improving their quality of life and their day-to-day life is really impactful in my opinion.
Yeah, thanks, Kylie. And it sounds like a lot of you out there shared Kylie's passion for shaping communities, also excited about the problem-solving aspects of transportation, but pretty even distribution among all the areas. So exciting times definitely lie ahead. So Brian, I'll turn it back over to you for the next section of the presentation.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you. Well, it sounds, moving into this conversation here about career opportunities, I want to really step back a little bit and want to try to connect this back to you. One of the first and foremost major themes that I can talk to you about is, as you're trying to figure out what it is you want to do in your career, that's often a real important part. I'm not sure what I want to do. I don't know what I'm going to like. And some of the challenges are your perspective of what you will be doing over a long time is limited. What I'd offer for you is what you're doing and what you choose to do is important, but what you will find, the environment in which you do it will become even that much more critical. You can work into an organization of any type in a technical area that you find very satisfying, but if the cultural environment isn't what is recharging for you, you just won't last. And so one of the things that we want to do is just step back a little bit and have you think about where do you want to be in your career? What are the kinds of qualities or characteristics of the environment that you wish to be in. And so really to take you away from so much the doing aspect to help you think a little bit more about where you fit into a broader picture. Transportation is such a huge area, and there's so many ways to be engaged in it. And that's one of the things to me that I've always found really exciting. I like the aspect of collaboration. For me, I've had experiences in final design, but what I find is I really in particular enjoy the planning side, the strategy side, the environmental clearance activities. To me, it's that challenge of trying to put the pieces together at the earliest stages, bringing my engineering experience in, bringing in my transportation experience, but trying to work through that. But I think what we'll find is that there's a wide range in engineering, planning, environmental studies. There's a marketing opportunity. There's policy-based. For those of you who are interested in the finance side, there's a great way of being involved in so many ways. And the technology is ever changing, and that can be anything from the signal systems. And within our firm, we have folks who are actually pushing the limits in signal systems and communications to those new topics we were talking about, is smart communities, connected vehicles, linking and putting us all together. Within transportation, you can have a real wide range, and at least in our firm, we have staff who have a wide range from environmental planning, public policy, geography. We have folks who are involved with IT systems. There's just a wide array, and by putting all of these folks together, really you're getting a nice mix. I think you're going to find too that many agencies have a number of specialists, whether that be in environmental or water quality. So there's just many, many ways to be involved in a career in transportation. The public sector is a fantastic way to go. Often those are, of course, the public works elements. And I think that sometimes there can be a lack of appreciation about public sector. But one of the things that's really critical about the public sector is that ability to establish the laws, the policy, and to help guide and direct where we're going. The public sector is that mean of providing consistency in how we're moving along, so we don't swing back and forth too much along the way. But also, it's the place to start implementing new policy that helps advance where we're going. Public sector is especially great if you'd like to have that opportunity to own what you're doing, to be a part of that community, to be working in that area that you live, and having ownership. You get to see projects that start from the very start to the very finish. You're managing systems. It's really just a great space and a great place to be. And that public sector can be from small communities all the way up, of course, to larger state and national institutions. But there are many ways to get engaged. It can be a very rewarding experience. We happen to be in the private sector. The private sector itself, sometimes people think about this just from, say, the economic development side. But one of the things that we really enjoy is the aspect of teaching, research. Our firm is a little bit different than other consulting firms in it that we make research, applied research, whether that's for the Transit Capacity and Quality of Service Manual, the Highway Safety Manual, other research documents. But we like to share, we do that because it's part of advancing the profession, but we also like to share what we're learning. We want to be able to teach. And there's some really great opportunities, again, to be able to working with that research, to be able to sharing where the profession's going. And of course, what we often see is that economic development side. That can be supporting industry, that can be supporting communities, and of course the public works, the public service. I get the chance to work in many places across the country, and there's something especially rewarding to come into any community of any size and to help understand that they have some of those same basic objectives of a safe environment, a place to be prosperous, a place for children to raise, a place to have business. And to me, it's very exciting and it's rewarding to be able to bring transportation services skills in that environment. Well, some of you were more from the poll. We're moving into the junior and senior side. One of the things I'd like you to do is step back again. Is just some broad questions for you to consider. And again, what I've highlighted is your career itself. A career and a job are two different things. anybody can get a job, but a career is really a place that you would want to invest, and you'd like to have a part of invest in you. So there really is that distinction. And again, it's more than what you do, it's in what environment. So some of the things that we want to think about is for you to do is just, where do you want your career path to lead? And that can be temporal too. Some of you in the first few years of your professional career, you'll have flexibility, certain parts of your life that give you lots more opportunity to do certain things. And what you might find is that changes over time, or you might have particular needs that you want to cover. So where do you want that career path to lead? And sometimes that can be difficult because we're often just focusing on a little bit of information to go from, and we're trying to make bigger choices. As I've mentioned before, what kind of environment do you want to be in? And really that part is, how can it be conducive to your own personal and professional growth? I don't believe in work-life balance. That implies that people sort of think that equally. I really like to think about it as work-life integration. I personally get a lot of personal satisfaction out of being involved with my profession. It's up to each of you to determine what kind of environment you want to be and where do you want to have that mix. And values are real critical for you as an individual and what you want in an organization. So you want to take time to understand that organization and what kind of values do you have and how do those match the organization. And then we'll talk about this a little bit more, but of course it can be about benefits and compensation. Obviously you want to be able to support yourself at some appropriate level. These are factors for you to consider. When we think about what you might consider in an organization, and this is any organization, public or private, nonprofit, but what we suggest is you look for and ask questions about how does that organization encourage your growth and development. For us, we think that an open environment for communication, transparency is especially important. You want to have that communication go two ways. You want to be able to share and understand. That's how we grow and learn. It should be an organization that's investing in you through mentors and other resources, reflecting that when you come into the profession, you may have a certain need for support, and as you evolve and you get more experience, you still want to have that support for resources and guidance and mentorship. And finally, you want to be in a place that challenges you. When you're uncomfortable is when you're really growing. You want to be looking for places that you can grow, find your way along, try new things, but it's those challenges that add the variety from which you will learn and from which you will find actually gives you a great amount of joy. Stepping away into total compensation, I think the part I'd like you to really think about is it's really easy to think about salary when you're getting started. That's the thing that you'll often see in a cover letter or somebody will tell you about an industry base. But when you talk to an organization, I want you to reflect that there's many other ways that they can support you. And of course, those can be money-based benefits, but it can be also professional support. Are they supporting you to go through to conferences, to get your professional registration? Is there a retirement contribution, and how does that contribution come together? It can be flexible time, it can be vacation time. Health insurance is a key part of our costs, that living costs, and what quality of health insurance do they have? And of course, does an organization, probably a private organization, have profit sharing? If you've worked hard, does this company give you a chance to potentially share back? My main point for you is that when you're talking with an organization, the base salary itself shouldn't be a differentiator, and you'll want to explore with these organizations many of these other areas and think in terms of total compensation and not just the salary. When we talk about the salary and why we say that part itself isn't so critical is that what we have found through different studies and information is that many of us start off really at the same basic area when we're first getting started. A couple $1,000s here and there really doesn't make too much of a difference. In fact, that over the long term, though, you want to what you can find is there's a great variance in where your salary can go. So making those choices early on what you might get isn't as important as really truly understanding an organization or where and how you'll benefit over time. So an organization that provides you learning experiences, growth, opportunities may in fact be a place that allows you to expand, challenge, and again, that your salary itself can increase over time. So I hope what I've been able to accomplish is just share a bit about transportation, the wide array of opportunities that are involved, for you to be thinking about your career and some of the important parts about that. Again, the cultural aspect, perhaps again looking at things a little bit differently than the dollar side. And what I'll do now is turn it over to Kylie to share about our internship program.
Yep, and I'm going to actually jump in here. This is Jennifer. I'm going to share more about Kittelson, who we are as a firm, and then go into some more detail about the internship program. So the next series of slides, well, they're about Kittelson, and like Brian mentioned earlier in the presentation, we're really just using ourselves as an example to get you thinking about some of the broader issues of values and firm purpose. At Kittelson, our purpose is to create an environment of lifelong learning, and we do this in a variety of ways by supporting staff at conferences, helping them in professional organizations. We often host different lunchtime presentations on different technical areas, and we just continually encourage staff to explore new opportunities and project types. We always aim to advance the profession. As Brian mentioned, we're heavily involved in research at the national and local level. We conduct various trainings to clients and peers on different topics, and we're really dedicated to developing young staff through our internship program. And then the last one on here is to provide employees the opportunity for independent success. And this means providing our staff the tools they need to grow and succeed here in their career, and also the financial means to enjoy life well into retirement. And then in addition to a firm's purpose, the values are the core beliefs and the philosophies. Every individual and every organization has a set of values, whether they're consciously aware of them or not. And you'll find values across multiple organizations aren't the same. That doesn't mean that one set is right or wrong. It's just that organizations are different and they grow up differently. And while values are typically broad and can be quite high level, they get implemented in some of the smallest details of our day-to-day lives. And so it's always better, if you can, to assess a firm's value by their actions, not just their words. So one of our objectives for you in your career search is to try to identify a firm's values. And a few questions you can ask during an interview process are, why was the company or a specific department established? Ask them to give you a specific example of a difficult decision they recently made. What were the trade-offs involved in that decision, and what ultimately led them to make the choice that they did? And then ask how they make decisions about adding staff, reducing staff, or increasing the breadth or depth of a service area. What are those thought processes that go into those decisions? At Kittelson, we really value outward focus, so thinking about others, our clients, our families before ourselves, and to create a trust-based environment. We put a lot of trust in our employees, and our employees put a lot of trust back in the firm to help them grow and succeed. And then there is the operating philosophy. And the operating philosophy is how an organization practices their values. So at Kittelson, we have a one firm philosophy where we operate as one firm in many locations. Our project teams almost always include staff from multiple offices. I don't think I'm working on a single project right now that's exclusively staff from Tampa. We encourage staff exchanges to visit other offices to help develop relationships with other staff, get them exposed to new project types and projects in different locations. And we try to make communication as seamless as possible between offices with the help of technology like video conferencing and cloud storage. We can work pretty seamlessly with staff all across the country, much like Brian, Kylie, and I are doing today through this webinar. And this is just a quick snapshot of where those locations are. Kittelson's not a huge company. We have about 180 employees and presence in 13 states. And one of the advantages of having staff all around the country is that it gives our employees the chance to learn how different organizations and governments operate. So before we transition to more of the specific opportunities here at Kittelson, we're going to stop and do one more poll question to see what you find most intriguing about KAI's purpose and values. And while you all are answering, I'll ask Brian to share his thoughts.
Yeah, one of the things I've really enjoyed about Kittelson is the trust-based environment and the opportunity for independent success. And in my mind, they go together. we're a company that doesn't have a lot of policies per se. We try to think about the lines of what would you do if it was your company, and the basic line is it really is. And so that trust within the company goes both ways, and our company operates with a lot of, you do well with self-initiative, and there's the opportunity for each of us to recognize that we have a chance to do what we'd like to do at different times of our lives, and that trust-based environment and the opportunity for each individual for success as they measure it, to me, is one thing that's really unique, and I find it to be something that's really rewarding over the years.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And it seems like a few of you were also intrigued by the opportunity for independent success and trust-based environment, but the top responses were the contributions back to the profession and that opportunity for lifelong learning. So now I'll get into more of the specifics about our internship program. I mentioned during the introductions at the beginning of this webinar that I interned with Kittelson when I was a student, and it was definitely one of the best experiences I had as a student. It's pretty safe to say I learned more during that one summer than I did during any of my transportation classes at school. Each year we hire students from universities around the country to be a part of the program, and we hire interns from both undergraduate and graduate schools, and look from students from a variety of majors. Of course, engineering and planning, but we've also had interns with backgrounds in public health, architecture, business, policy. There are so many different majors and academic backgrounds that feed into transportation. The most important thing is really that you have a passion for transportation and a willingness and drive to learn. We really like to think of our interns as a class. So there's usually one intern in each office. Sometimes we have two in our larger offices. And we provide weekly opportunities for them to check in through video conference, to share stories, discuss project work, compare experiences. We also have weekly tech sessions for all the interns and entry-level staff, and these cover topics such as Consulting 101, an introduction to some safety practices. One of my favorites is the history of the modern roundabout. And we also try to give our interns a variety of project work. So if you're an engineering student, we'll try to get you involved in a planning project. And if you're a planning student, don't be surprised if we have you doing some traffic operations. All of our interns will have multiple check-ins with Mark, our CEO, throughout the summer, and there'll also be an opportunity to meet with our CFO, Larry, to learn more about accounting and firm financials. It's really our goal for you to come away from this experience with a well-rounded experience of the transportation profession and what it means to be a transportation consultant. One thing that really stood out to me about Kittelson was the mentorship program. Every intern is given a mentor who will help them initially find housing and get settled in a potentially new city, and will help them throughout the summer find project work and really just be that go-to person to answer any questions. As a full-time employee now, I continue to reach out to the mentor I had as an intern to help with my professional development. And I also want to mention that the mentorship program is not unique to just interns. All full-time staff are also given a mentor that initially serves a very similar role as the intern mentor. They'll help you get settled, make sure you're getting a good variety of project work, and make sure you have the tools that you need to learn. And then after about 6 months or a year, we encourage you to pick a coach, and that can be anyone across the firm who you've developed a good relationship with and trust to give you good guidance as you continue to grow in your career. One of the best parts of the internship program is what we like to call the Intern Jamboree. So I mentioned that we typically have one intern in each office, but for 1 week during the summer, we fly all of our interns out to the same office. And it's just a great opportunity for you all to get to know each other better, get to know the staff in another office, and explore a new city. Last year, we went out to Portland, and I think we're slated to go back there again this year. Before I turn the presentation over to Kylie, we'll do another poll question. And we want to know what you think is the most valuable takeaway from an internship or an entry-level position. And I'll ask Kylie to share her thoughts while we're waiting for you all to respond.
Sure, thanks, Jennifer. I think I think all of these are big contributors to, the value that is in a full-time position or in an internship with Kittelson. The technical knowledge, I think, is a big part, like Jennifer said, with the training sessions and lunch and learns. those happen basically every week, and on top of that, you're working on project work with project managers that I think that's very valuable from. And because I'm a people person, and because our mentorship program and the Intern Jamboree is so people focused and relationship focused, I'd say that the most valuable takeaway that I would have is building relationships with peers.
Yeah, thanks, Kylie. So we'll go ahead and share the results of the poll. Overwhelmingly, the technical knowledge and networking with professionals are some of the biggest takeaways you all see from an entry-level position or an internship. So Kylie, I will go ahead and hand the presentation back off to you.
Great, thank you. Let me get this set up here. So Jennifer, could you take that back for a second and so I can show my green screen?
Yes. All right, headed back your way.
Thank you. All right. Can everyone see my screen okay?
I do not see your screen. Oh, there it is. We're good.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. I'm going to share some project examples that I've personally worked on or other Kittelson staff have worked on, and something that definitely each of you as an intern with Kittelson or in a full-time position would be working on. So the first project that I'm going to be talking about is the District Mobility Project. It's a project that we had worked on for just about over a year for Washington, and this project involved analyzing big data and visualizing it to measure mobility and performance in terms of measures like congestion, reliability, and accessibility. And this one addresses mobility challenges in Washington, D.C., and monitors mobility for all modes of transportation, with examples of performance measures included our travel time index, bus ridership, transit coverage, bicycle comfort, and pedestrian accessibility. So the final product of this project is a website, which is listed there, used by DC DOT or DDOT, and it's also publicly available to learn about mobility throughout the district. This is an example of a research and education project that deals heavily with data analysis and visualization. The Livable Claiborne Communities is a project that is more geared towards transportation planning. This project is for the Interstate 10 and Claiborne Avenue interchange in New Orleans, Louisiana, and explored what might happen if I-10's footprint in the Claiborne Avenue communities was reduced. I-10 has acted as a barrier between two communities, and Kittelson staff worked on a concept for what the community would be like with a reconfigured interchange for Interstate 10 at Claiborne Avenue. So this is the before visual. It shows the general area is rather industrial and depressed by the interstate ramps and amount of empty space due to it. However, in the after visual, with the new concept, ramps were eliminated and the entire interchange was reconfigured. The new concept opened up space for development, and traffic impacts for this reconfiguration were shown to be not nearly as severe as the community had feared. So the next project that I'd like to get into that's also a planning project more focused on complete streets is the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization vision. And this project is with the Metropolitan Planning Organization in the Kennedy Space Center area in Florida. And this vision project was one where Kittelson staff identified places in the county for where roadways aren't well suited for multimodal activity. This slide here shows the before and after plans for one of 5 corridors that we had a part in working on. For example, you can see here that there was a lot of pavement in the top image that was narrowed with curb extensions, sidewalks, crossings in the after image. And some of these plans are under construction now. The Second Street Lighting and Tree Well Design project is a design project that involved the implementation of a livable community plan. So in this case, a community wanted to adjust the lighting and landscaping along a roadway in Arizona. So for this type of project, we compiled design plans such as the sheet here that includes detailed design information such as wiring for the lighting, location of conduits, etc. And this last project that I'm going to discuss is a project that I'm working on with GDOT in Washington, D.C. This is a traffic safety engineering support services project. This one has allowed Kittelson to work with GDOT greatly and the community as well through advisory neighborhood commissions to address safety concerns all throughout Washington, D.C. So many of the safety improvements are related to traffic calming measures such as speed humps and curb extensions, but it also involves geometric design. So this one specific task I worked on dealt heavily with multimodal safety, with neighborhood residents very concerned about their pedestrian safety through dangerous intersections and the driver behavior in the neighborhood. With many one-way and narrow streets in an urbanized area like DC, it takes getting pretty creative to come up with improvements that minimize the removal of parking and allow for all modes of transportation to be used safely. So this image shows a snippet of some of the improvements that we recommended for the long-term solution.
Thanks, Kylie.
Now I'm going to, yeah.
We'll do one more poll question before we get to the question and answer section. So in this one, we want to know what area of transportation most interests you. And while you all are putting in your answers, I'll ask Brian to go ahead and share his answer to this question.
I really enjoy the transportation planning, but I really see that much from the opportunity to bring in geometric design. I had a chance to work on that livable Claiborne project that Kylie talked about, and so from a planning perspective, we were really had the opportunity to take away freeway infrastructure and identify where and how we can change up the land use. I was involved from the engineering side to understand where and how we might look at the physical form. So I think that's probably what I would pick out.
Yeah, and it looks like most of you tend to agree, with over 50% leaning more towards transportation planning, and then quite a few in traffic operations and research and safety as well. So thanks, everyone. That's the end of the presentation portion of the webinar, and now we'll move into the question and answer portion. So please continue to put your questions into that console on GoToWebinar. We'll try to get to as many as we can before the end of the evening here. And we'll start with one question that I think we all can answer, and that is, how did each of us find our passion for this profession? So Brian, I'll put you on the spot first.
Yeah, I was really interested. For me, when I was actually studying in my engineering degree, I really didn't enjoy transportation. It wasn't that interesting, and a lot of it, of course, has to do with the professors. But when I first started working at a school, I started working with a couple of senior level staff, and they were able to look and essentially see the roadway network so much differently than I had before. And what I realized was I really realized it was more than just a freeway and a highway that we were trying to investigate, but in fact it was a true system. It was a roadway network. It was connected to rail and transit. I think that was really something that just clicked for me, where it moved me away from the elements of roadway design and the things that I was taught in school, to really truly understanding where and how the roadway component itself was just a small part of the network, and of course that was all part of the community. So that was really eye-opening for me, and it actually changed my perspective for the rest of my profession. I've seen things differently ever since.
Kylie, do you want to share your story of how you found your passion for the profession?
Sure. So while I was getting my bachelor's degree at James Madison University, I had been in a few classes that were similar to transportation, the things that I was looking into. But I really, with the general engineering program, I was exploring what I wanted to do afterwards, and transportation caught my eye. I had a professor and a good friend of mine who helped start up our capstone project, which was where I really dived into transportation, and we looked into bike ped access, really from the social equity side. So communities that often aren't able to afford a car and have to rely on transportation modes such as transit or walking to get to their job or to get to their grocery store. And my heart was sort of just captured in that. And from there, I was able to do a design plan for a greenway system in the city of Harrisonburg. And that's really where my passion began. And from that point, I knew that really what I wanted to do was help improve the access and improve the safety of people to improve their well-being.
Yeah, and I first entered civil engineering. I originally wanted to do bridge design. I quickly realized that most of our major waterways have already been crossed, and the architects get to have all the fun there. So at the time I was having this epiphany, I kind of stumbled upon transportation and was really drawn by the optimization aspect of it and continue to be. So looking at all the different data sources, what the public wants, what the city wants, and trying to find the best solution for a given set of circumstances, because every set of circumstances is different. So I can do the same project 10 times and get a different solution every time, and I just find that so interesting and fascinating, and it's what continues to drive me in the profession even today. So I will answer one quick question, and that is, what software does Kittelson prefer new transportation analysts to work with? The more experience you have with software, the better, but we don't expect you to come in with any prior knowledge of software packages. We expect that we'll have to teach you everything you need to know on the job. So if you come in with some GIS or AutoCAD skills, that's great, but certainly not a requirement for a successful internship or entry-level candidate.
And Jennifer, this is Brian. I think I'd even go another step further, which is we want to really be sure that folks understand the principles behind the software, to understand what it is, the analytics, and so it's not just a black box. And so sometimes we'll actually have you do work by hand, work through the hard way, so you understand where and how the computations come together, and then you get to use the software. So just want to emphasize, as Jen said, yeah, it's not what software you know, but we want to really make sure you understand what the principles are, what the weaknesses are of the various software programs.
Yeah, thanks, Brian, for adding on there. That's so important. One question about how long our projects usually take. So Kylie, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. I think there is a variety of answers that I could come up with. Some of the projects I'm working on right now, so I'm averaging probably working on 5 or 6 different projects right now, and some of those are 3-week projects, pretty short development services projects, and some of my other ones are, they've been going on for about 9 months now. Just like that project with CDOT that I was sharing. That's one that I've been working on since the spring, and it's a contract that we have that we're continually receiving tasks and project work all within that. So it could be that some projects will have different tasks that are shorter, but the project goes a long way. And then a lot of planning projects typically do last about that long. The district mobility project that I also shared is one that was about a year and a half long. And in that process, you can have, maybe be working on it for a good 4 weeks or a good 2 months and drop out as other projects demand time, and then you hop back into it, maybe a few months down the road. So I would definitely say it varies.
Yeah, thanks, Kylie. The next question, is a master's degree required for a career in Kittelson? I'll give the short answer, and then Brian, I'll ask you to elaborate because I know you have a little bit of a unique perspective on this. The short answer is no, it's not required. We have a good mix of staff that have master's degrees and a few staff that have PhDs, and plenty of staff who do not have a graduate degree and have led very successful careers. And Brian Ray is one of those folks. So Brian, can you share a little bit more on that topic?
Sure. I think one of the things, at least for KAI, what we really emphasize is continued professional development. And so a lot of times when somebody one of our younger staff will say, hey, should I get my master's? I really step back and say, well, what is it that you're really trying to achieve? Having a master's is a great professional development experience, and it's terrific. Sometimes what we find is that we like to encourage staff to go back to get their master's after they've had a chance to be in the profession for a while, where they might get a chance to think a little bit more about what they might like. Through our activities and some of our research, we have contacts and connections with a variety of universities, and that's a way for staff to meet and talk to folks. And then what we have found is that when people go back to school after starting for a while, they're often much more focused. They bring experience with them, and that gets to be a rewarding experience. But I'd also say that that's not really critical, and sometimes it's just where you are in your development, where you are in your mindset. But some of the experiences of working in other offices, international exchanges, there's a variety of ways that you can continue to grow professionally. But I think the key part is no, there's no minimum for us as having a master's. We think it's great, we want to support it, but really it's continued professional development.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So another interesting question, and this is someone who's currently thinking through some different majors and wondering if there's a place for electrical engineers in transportation. And I want to broaden that out a little bit. Transportation is evolving so quickly, and we are trying to keep up with the changing technology. And so there are disciplines such as electrical engineering and computer science that are becoming more and more important to transportation and the role that it's going to play in the future. So I would say, yes, there are definitely paths for electrical engineers. The one I can think of immediately is with our signal operations. We're being asked by clients to really understand the ins and outs of signal cabinets and how they work, and having that basis in electrical engineering can be really valuable to that. So I don't know, Brian and Kylie, if you have any other perspectives on that question.
I agree with you. I think, yes, that really is. I think, communications, fiber optics, and other linkages, as we start thinking about these smart cities, the integration of the tools and technology, we've been connected with a vendor who is working through a parking management side where they're essentially putting in parking sensors in communities and to help try to work through a parking, helps promote parking management. Absolutely a great interface between consulting and the technical needs of that. We're doing some other work with a company that's looking at using LiDAR systems and other types of data collection to more comprehensively evaluate roadways and curvature and so on. And there's a great interface really for all types of electrical systems communication. So yeah, without a question.
I agree. I don't have anything more to say.
Kylie, I'll send this one your way, and that's how does Kittelson incorporate community impact and feedback into our projects?
Sure. I think I mean, feedback and is a big part of our project. I hope this is answering the question correctly or appropriately, but a lot of times just working on any general projects, what we hope to do is to receive feedback and give feedback, and certain projects will have more of a community focus, such as ones where we are working with a state or a local government. So we do have public workshops and things like that, and community feedback is definitely an important part, just like Jennifer said, of optimizing what is best for the community versus maybe what is available for funding versus what we see is best in terms of safety, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's a great amount of feedback given, and we encourage receiving feedback, and we take that and use it to the best of our ability to benefit the project in its appropriate way.
Yeah, and I can give a project example. I was working on a corridor study in downtown Orlando, and there was a lot of different opinions. It was a planning study whether this road should be more car-focused or more bike-focused, and so we put together a pretty robust public involvement effort where at the beginning of the study, we sat down with a variety of stakeholders and just did some listening sessions, gathering as much input and feedback as we could from them. And then we set up two groups. So one group was made up of agency officials, so the city, the local planning organization, the state, the local transit agency. And then we also set up a group of community members, neighborhoods associations, local business owners. And we met with each of those groups throughout the project. As we wrapped up our existing conditions, we presented them to them. As we were brainstorming alternatives, we vetted them with those groups before we took them to the public. So we were there was a constant feedback loop throughout the project, and it helped us reach a solution at the end that was the best consensus we could get with all the different opinions, and it definitely helped us get a better outcome for the project. So there's one question about how to incorporate design thinking into our process. And so Brian, I was wondering if you could take a shot at that question.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited. Yeah,
I figured you would be.
I love it. It's really, to me, one of the things that I really do enjoy about KAI, and Jennifer had hinted about this, that we really we don't silo our staff technically. So, for example, we don't have departments. You're not in the planning department or the traffic department or the design department. Really, you come into the firm as transportation professionals. And what we look for is the way to really try to cross-train and expose people to different areas. So for me, from my final design experience, I've had that. I didn't enjoy it so much, and when I was involved with some early environmental documentation and early EISs, environmental impact statements, when I really saw where and how we were using the alternatives development, that's where I saw that we were able to pull that engineering up front. That's really expanded much more now to context-sensitive solutions and performance-based design and performance-based evaluations. And so if I have a community that's trying to create a walkable community at a policy level, there might be a complete streets or a walkable community policy. And by understanding what the intended outcomes are of that policy or whom we're trying to serve, which would be pedestrians and bicycles from a quality of service, we actually can begin thinking about what are the geometrics and the design elements that we want to bring in that will yield those qualities that promote and support that part of the policy. So to me, that's one of the things that I found to be most exciting. And in KAI, we have planners who are outstanding designers. We have designers who are outstanding planners. That cross-training is something that helps make either part of the profession that much stronger.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. The next question, do interns take ownership over specific portions of a project, or do they tend to pinch in as needed? Our goal is definitely for you to be able to take ownership of a task or a project. We work really hard during the hiring process to pair our interns with mentors that they have a good personal connection with, and that do the type of work that they're really interested in. And through that mentor-intern relationship, we have the mentor try to identify project work early before you even get here, so you can really hit the ground running. We, of course, give you all the guidance and coaching you need to get started. I know it can be a little overwhelming to jump right in on day one. And we try to find at least one project that you can take ownership of and finish, complete from start to finish during your internship. So whether it's a signal warrant study or a traffic impact study, something where you can do the analysis, write the memo, and submit that to the client and get that feedback. And then there will also be some places where you contribute a certain task as part of a larger project. So that's often the case too with the internships, since they do tend to be a little bit shorter. We shoot for 12 weeks during the summer. So Kylie and Brian, I don't know if you have any other experiences to add on that with your work with interns.
This is Brian. One of the things that when we bring in an intern, we treat you as a full-time employee, as a professional consultant. And as Jennifer indicated, and as you may have picked up from Kylie, we give you as much support as you need, but we treat you as a transportation professional, and we help augment that. If you're a freshman and you're an intern, we know that you've had less experience. If you're coming in as a senior, get your master's later on, we know that you have more experience. And so just that basic fundamental principle of treating you as a full-time transportation professional is really the basis for our internship program.
Yeah, and I would just reiterate that the community, the office that you're located in, your mentor will, when projects, maybe your load is lighter, and there are many like short-term projects that you can pick up and work on. We definitely do try to make sure that your schedule is fully utilized and that you are getting the most out of Kittelson, and we do think that's through diving into a project and taking ownership of it.
Thanks. So we'll take a couple of more questions before we wrap up here. There's a couple of you that are wondering what the biggest challenges we've faced in our career have been and how we overcome them. So do we have any takers to take that one first?
I'll go ahead and share an interesting, it's actually pretty similar to the whole, optimizing the needs and desires of the community versus, what we best recommend and what, in this case, DDOT best recommended. So, yeah, just an example is I was working on a project that's located in the DC office with DDOT, and had a neighborhood like advisory neighborhood commissions meeting. So many active members in the community were out there and were very fond of the improvements, the safety improvements that we had proposed or were suggesting to them. Yeah, they were definitely big fans of it. However, when we moved that to the next step and opened it up to more members of the community, obviously you're going to receive, some pushback from residents that either live on the street and have different opinions than some others. So the biggest challenge with this one was it was a 2-lane one-way road that we were hoping to incorporate like a bike boulevard into, and wouldn't take away parking, but it would take away one lane of road, one lane. And even though we felt that it was best, the community, the members or residents that lived on that street definitely did not feel that way. And it took a lot of trying to, you know, let the community know that like we're on their side, like you know, we are trying to do what's best for them, but we're also you know, very much listening to them. It was not at any point did we feel like we were you know, disagreeing to a point where we were forcing one option over the other. But that's been a project that you know, since that meeting has been a little rough on the edges, and we're trying to you know, I guess bring that community back to feeling like we do support them, and we're doing the best for them. So that's one of those community feedback examples that a challenge that we're currently still working on.
Do you have any interesting challenges to share, either project-wise or just in your career in general?
Yeah, well, this is just more of an observation. It's really surprising, and sometimes it's from working around the country. I see in some areas they can be really progressive, and so there's I can give an example of Hays County, Texas. There's a farm to market FM 150 corridor study, and Hays County is just below Austin, Texas, a relatively small county. Probably nobody's ever heard of it. But they took on a really outrageously fantastic public outreach program to invest in and understand and set a master plan for what this corridor will be. They knew growth was coming. They could see Austin growing to the south. They could see their own communities growing to the north. They wanted to preserve the character and the history and the heritage of this corridor. And you can probably find it on the website, Improve FM 150. And that's a really progressive, extensive outreach and a community investment. Yet I can work in another, I won't name a community, but I can work in another community, and yet it's still very auto-dominated and very dimensionally based. And so sometimes to me it's really surprising that there's so much new information through the National Cooperative Highway Research Program or the NACTO organization for PEDs and bikes. And it's really surprising sometimes to me that you can have such great information that's out there, and yet there are these backwaters or other areas where you're struggling to explain to people why they can do something a little bit different. It's, to me, I look on things as the very positive side, that there's great information out there, that we just have to take time to help share it and integrate it into our projects. But it is surprising sometimes to go into a community and realize, wow, I've got to set my clock back 20 years.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add one other challenge we face often in Florida, at least, is funding for transportation and how to get the best transportation solution you can on limited resources. We're working with an agency here to improve transit service in a pretty suburban area of Tampa. And the transit agency was not able to put any more funding into the transit system. So we had to look at what was out there today, what was working really well, and what wasn't working so well. And so by taking some fixed route transit service, so buses that run on the same route and stop at the same stops every day, there were some of those routes that were really performing quite poorly and only picking up a few people a day. So we were able to shift that to what's called on-demand transit. So using things like Uber and Lyft and taxi vouchers to serve those few people, and then put the rest of the money into improving the routes that folks needed the most to get to and from work. So I'm trying to look for those creative solutions to maximize, get the most bang for your buck out of these projects. It's often a challenge that we have to deal with. And then one question that we'll close on is what we look for in interns and entry-level candidates. Brian, do you want to share some of your thoughts on that first?
Yeah, I think what we look for are staff that are professionals, whether it's internships, who are eager to learn, have a thirst for knowledge. The people in our organization who do the best they show a lot of initiative. It's sort of that fearlessness of trying to get in and work your way around. I think it's people who are willing to be challenged and try and recognize that there's an amount of humility that's involved with learning and as you're coming along. I would say that those are a couple of qualities. But I think that inquisitiveness and a real strong sense of self-direction and initiative, it works really well within our organization. There's so much support around, and those folks are really able to grab and tap into so many of the resources around us.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And this question was asked a few different ways, so I want to touch on a couple of additional points on that. That we look for both undergraduate and graduate students for our internship program and entry-level staff. And we really evaluate you based on what you've done so far and the opportunities that you have in front of you. So we know some universities have really developed transportation programs, and you have quite a few transportation classes at your disposal to take. We know other programs don't have any. So we really take that into account when we're evaluating where you are in your career search and in your thinking. And like Brian said, it's really just that passion to learn. So I think we put more emphasis on some of those softer skills than the technical skills early on. Brian, you think that's fair to say?
I think that's really true. I think it's a little bit like software. We're not really worried about software. We can teach you any software that you need to know, and it's that critical thinking skills, strong communication skills that ultimately really help somebody succeed in the profession.
Great. So I think with that, we will wrap up today's webinar. Thanks everyone for participating and asking such thoughtful questions. I know there were a few that we weren't able to get to and a few that were specific to individuals. So feel free to follow up with us after the webinar. When I sent you the link to this webinar, I also included Kylie and Mai's contact information. So please don't hesitate to reach out after this. If you are interested in expressing interest in an internship or a full-time position, we would encourage you to do so. You can do that on our website by going to the career section. And last but not least, after you log off of the webinar, you'll receive a prompt to take a quick survey. We would appreciate any and all feedback for us to continually improve this webinar. If you aren't able to do it tonight, I know it's getting a little bit late for some, you'll also receive a follow-up email with that link so you can take it more at your convenience after the webinar. So with that, just want to thank everyone for coming and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you
So much.